December 16, 1944. The frozen Ardennes forest, cloaked in fog and snow, trembled under the thunder of artillery. To the weary American defenders, it sounded like any other morning bombardment. But something was different. Terrifyingly different. Shells weren't slamming into the ground, exploding in predictable craters. Instead, they detonated in the air, 30 to 50 feet above the advancing Germans, raining down shards of steel with inescapable precision. No foxhole could save them. No tree, no trench, no ditch offered safety. German soldiers, veterans hardened by years on the Eastern Front, found themselves under a type of fire they couldn't understand. For the first time, they faced a weapon designed to annihilate the very concept of cover. That morning, Colonel Oscar Axelson had just changed the battlefield forever. Colonel Axelson of the 406th Artillery Group wasn't supposed to use this weapon. The proximity fuse, America's most closely guarded wartime secret, was forbidden for frontline use, reserved only for anti-aircraft defense where unexploded shells couldn't fall into enemy hands. But desperation breeds boldness. Axelson's small reconnaissance force, the 38th Cavalry Squadron, faced annihilation by waves of German infantry. Conventional artillery couldn't hold them back. Axelson knew following orders meant defeat, perhaps even the collapse of the sector. So, without clearance, he gave the order load the proximity, fused shells. In that single moment, he gambled not only his career, but the very outcome of the Ardennes offensive. When the first shells exploded in midair, panic rippled through the German ranks. Assault formations that had charged bravely now fell apart under invisible death raining from above. Each detonation unleashed a cone of shrapnel covering a killing zone far larger than ground, burst shells ever could. Soldiers crouching in trenches, once confident in their protection, were shredded by steel fragments slicing downward. Veterans who had survived Stalingrad and Kursk now faced something beyond their comprehension. The battlefield turned into a nightmare, one where even hiding meant certain death. Only hours earlier, optimism had pulsed through German high command. Operation Watch on the Rhine, Hitler's last great gamble, was underway. Over 200,000 soldiers, 1,000 tanks, and nearly 2,000 artillery pieces surged forward, hidden by fog and secrecy. The Führer promised his generals that this offensive would split the Allies in two, capture Antwerp, and reverse Germany's fading fortunes. The attack achieved total surprise. American intelligence had catastrophically failed, missing the signs of buildup. Green recruits in battle, weary veterans were scattered along a supposedly quiet sector of the Western Front. But just as German momentum seemed unstoppable, the secret science of the proximity fuse began rewriting the rules of battle. The proximity fuse wasn't just another weapon. It was a technological miracle. Packed inside a steel casing no larger than a coffee can was a self-contained radar system. Each fuse carried 130 delicate components, including miniature vacuum tubes designed to withstand the unimaginable shock of artillery fire. 20,000 times the force of gravity. At launch, the acceleration crushed a glass ampule, activating a tiny battery to power the radar. As the shell soared through the air, it sent out radio waves, detecting its distance to the target. At the perfect moment, it detonated. For the first time in history, artillery could think for itself. The weapon's origins were as secretive as the Manhattan Project itself. In a disguised car dealership in Silver Spring, Maryland, Dr. Merrill Tuve and the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratory worked at breakneck speed to perfect the fuse. At peak production, 3% of all American physicists labored on this project. Security was absolute. Workers couldn't discuss their assignments, not even with their families. Every fuse was tracked with a unique serial number. The proximity fuse wasn't just an innovation. It was a revolution wrapped in secrecy, guarded as fiercely as the atomic bomb. When first proposed, many scientists and generals dismissed the idea. How could a fragile radio tube survive being fired from a cannon? How could electronics function while spinning at thousands of revolutions per second? And yet, by late 1944, the impossible had been achieved. The Allies now held in their hands a weapon 50 times more lethal than conventional artillery. But no one dared risk its capture. until Colonel Axelson, staring down defeat in the Ardennes, decided otherwise. To the German grenadiers advancing through the forest, the experience was horrifying. Artillery had always been survivable if you knew its rhythms. Dive into a trench, flatten against the earth, and let the storm pass. But this storm followed them wherever they went. Soldiers screamed in disbelief as explosions bloomed overhead, shredding entire squads in seconds. Panic spread, discipline broke. Even officers, veterans of countless battles, were stunned by this new form of death from above. One survivor later admitted, "It felt as if the sky itself was killing us." At Monschau, the German advance slowed under this invisible wall of fire. The 38th Cavalry Squadron, though outnumbered, held firm thanks to Axelson's gamble. His unauthorized use of proximity fuses bought critical hours that allowed American reinforcements to react, reposition, and prepare defenses. In the grand sweep of history, it was a small engagement, but in reality it marked a pivot. A secret weapon, deployed at the right moment, had blunted the tip of Hitler's last spear. Colonel Axelson knew he had violated orders. In theory, he could have faced a court-martial for risking Allied secrets, but the results spoke for themselves. Commanders quickly realized what had happened, and instead of punishment, Axelson's decision was quietly embraced. Soon, the ban on frontline use of proximity fuses was lifted. What began as one man's gamble became a battlefield standard, unleashing a storm of steel that would devastate German offensives across the Ardennes. Once unleashed, proximity fuses transformed artillery warfare. Entire batteries switched from ground burst to air-burst fire. German troops caught in open ground suffered catastrophic losses. Even tanks, though armored, found their crews disoriented and vulnerable as shrapnel tore into accompanying infantry. The balance of power shifted rapidly. Where once German assaults rolled forward with grim determination, now they faltered, blood white under skies that seemed to explode with merciless precision. While weather, terrain, and Allied resilience all played roles in stopping the German advance, historians agree the proximity fuse was decisive. It gave thinly stretched American forces a multiplying force. One artillery battery could achieve the firepower of an entire battalion. In the Ardennes, where speed and surprise were everything, this new lethality shattered German timetables. What was meant to be a lightning thrust to Antwerp, instead bogged down in blood and steel. After the Bulge, proximity fuses became standard in all major operations. As the Allies pushed toward the Rhine, German defenses crumbled under relentless airburst fire. Bridges, crossroads, and strongpoints once thought defensible became death traps. For German infantry, the war had turned into an unwinnable equation. Every step forward meant walking beneath an invisible storm. The scale of production was staggering. By war's end, over 22 million proximity fuses had been manufactured, each one a marvel of engineering. Factories worked around the clock, with women and men assembling devices they couldn't even be told the purpose of. Their silent labor created one of the most significant force multipliers of the Second World War, saving untold numbers of Allied lives. Winston Churchill himself would later call the proximity fuse the second most important secret weapon of the war, next only to the atomic bomb. Its effect on both land and air warfare was transformative. German V-1 rockets were intercepted mid-flight by anti-aircraft guns equipped with proximity-fused shells. Japanese kamikazes were shredded before reaching their targets. Across every theater, the fuse proved its worth. Desperate, the Germans attempted to recover unexploded shells for reverse engineering, but American countermeasures ensured that nearly all detonated as intended. Even when fragments were recovered, the complexity of the design, miniature tubes, high G tolerances, specialized batteries, made replication impossible within Germany's collapsing industrial base. The Reich could only endure its effects, never duplicate them. Beyond physical destruction, the proximity fuse created psychological terror. Soldiers who once trusted their trenches no longer felt safe. Airbursts struck with a randomness that shredded morale as much as bodies. German accounts describe troops refusing to advance into zones of invisible fire. For the Wehrmacht, Already stretched to breaking, this erosion of spirit was devastating. Even after its success, secrecy lingered. Soldiers using proximity fuses were instructed never to speak of them. Reports disguised their use under vague language. The weapon remained shrouded, its true nature hidden from the public, until long after the war. For many veterans, it was a silent miracle, a secret ally that turned the tide at their darkest hour. The principles of the proximity fuse endure today. Modern smart munitions, guided artillery, and precision bombs trace their lineage to this invention. What began as a desperate gamble in the Ardennes became the foundation of modern battlefield lethality. In many ways, the frozen forests of December 1944 witnessed the dawn of precision warfare. December 16, 1944 began as Hitler's gamble, a last roll of the dice to save a dying Reich. But in the snowy woods near Monschau, a single colonel's unauthorized decision changed everything. The sky rained steel, German hopes faltered, and the tide of war turned irrevocably. The proximity fuse wasn't just a weapon. It was proof that in war, science and courage, secrecy and desperation can combine to reshape history. In those frozen forests, the mathematics of death were rewritten, and with them, the fate of nations.